The founders believed, and the conservative agrees, in the dignity of the individual, that we as human beings have a right to live freely, and pursue that which motivates us, not because man or some government says so, but because these are God-given natural rights. Like the founders, the conservatives also recognized in society a harmony of interests, as Adam Smith put it, and rules of cooperation that have developed through generations of human experience and collective reasoning that promote the betterment of the individual and society. This is characterized as ordered liberty, the social contract, or the civil society. Now, what are the conditions of this civil society? In the civil society, the individual is recognized and accepted as more than an abstract statistic or faceless member of some group. Rather, he is a unique, spiritual being with a soul and a conscience. He is free to discover his own potential and pursue his own legitimate interests, tempered, however, by a moral order that has its foundation in faith and guides his life and all human life through the prudent exercise of judgment. As such, the individual in the civil society strives, albeit imperfectly, to be virtuous. That is, restrained, ethical, and honorable. He rejects the relativism that blurs the lines between good and bad, right and wrong, just and unjust, and means and ends. In the civil society, the individual has a duty to respect the unalienable rights of others and the values, customs, and traditions tried and tested over time and passed from one generation to the next that establish society's cultural identity. He is responsible for attending to his own well-being and that of his family. And he has a duty as a citizen to contribute voluntarily to the welfare of his community through good works. In the civil society, private property and liberty are inseparable. The individual's right to live freely and safely and pursue happiness includes the right to acquire and possess property, which represents the fruits of his own intellectual and/or physical labor. As the individual's time on earth is finite, so too is his labor. The illegitimate denial or diminution of his private property enslaves him to another and denies him his liberty. In the civil society, a rule of law, which is just, known, and predictable, and applied equally, albeit imperfectly, provides the governing framework for and restraints on the polity, thereby nurturing the civil society and serving as a check against the arbitrary use and hence abuse of power. For the conservative, the civil society has as its highest purpose its preservation and improvement. The modern liberal believes in the supremacy.
Okay, and then he goes on to what it means to be a liberal and what they believe. But I wanted to focus on just the conservative aspects and what he talked about and why I believe. See, the conservative believes in the foundations of our country, the beliefs of the founding fathers, the idea of the individual. See, I believe that each individual is unique, a unique spiritual being with gifts given to him by God that don't depend on his skin color or anything like that. But he's a unique individual, and I believe it's the individual that can save this country. And what do I mean by that? I'm not against, I'm not for all individualism, so we just all take care of ourselves. No, but I believe we give the individual opportunity to do things. It was an individual who came up with ideas for many of our books or philosophy. It was just individuals, different individuals with different ideas. Many innovations that we have came from individual ideas. But see, the liberal and the statist, like Obama is, they believe in the idea of government. They believe in government regulation. They believe in government intervention. They believe in government being involved the most. They believe the state is where most prosperity comes from, first and foremost. So when Obama says he wants to create jobs, he is growing government and getting government involved more in your life to create more jobs. But in order to do that, he has to take away some of your liberty. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, how does the government even pay for itself? For one, it pays through taxes. Now, under the Constitution, the government does have right to take taxes, but it was only supposed to take taxes to provide for those enumerated powers. When you were starting to take taxes to create jobs, all you're doing is redistributing wealth. You're taking it from one section of society and giving it to another section, and that they don't have constitutional authority to do. There is no constitutional authority to, quote-unquote, create jobs. Now, they can add incentives, like cutting taxes, like getting rid of regulations, like getting the government more out of the way, but Obama and his philosophy, they don't want to do that. Instead, they want to create more regulations. Instead, they want to create more bureaucracies. And when you create more regulations and more laws, that gets on your liberty. Think if you're trying to create a business, and you have, a certain food, and one food you make is really popular, is fried, and has trans fats in it. Well, there are some cities now where the government has gotten involved and said, you can't have trans fats in your food. But what do you mean I can't have trans fats in my food? I want to sell this. People like it. I should have a right to do that. You don't have constitutional authority to tell me I can't have trans fats. Oh, nope. No trans fats. How can they get away with that? And that's what I'm talking about. So that if that person's business thrived on the idea of having that one food product, he's out of business. His liberty, a little bit of his liberty has been taken away. And that's why we're against healthcare, because what they believe in healthcare is they want to create more government intervention in healthcare. They want to create panels which tell the doctor, or guide the doctor, quote unquote, guide the doctor and tell him what he can do. Well, that takes away the doctor's liberty of being able to treat the patient how he sees best. And it takes away the patient's liberty in order to let the doctor in order to get what treatment he needs. The patient says, I like that treatment, I want to get this treatment. And then the doctor says, okay, I think that will work, I will give you that treatment. And then a government bureaucracy in Washington or somewhere else says, no, that isn't cost effective, even though it might work, you can't get that treatment. It's not good for the whole of society. What about the individual? What about that individual patient? It's not about the individual with liberals or statists, it's about what is good for the collective, the whole of society. But what they don't understand is what is really good for the collective and the whole of society is nurturing the liberty of the individual. Because capitalism is born through entrepreneurs. And capitalism has brought the most prosperity in the history of the world. See, if you believe in collectivism or socialism or communism, all you have to do is look at countries like North Korea. Their people are starving. The Soviet Union collapsed under itself. Those people had nothing. These socialist countries, they don't have any liberty. Instead, they're controlled by dictators who tell their people what they can do. Look at Cuba. People in Cuba try to get their cars to float on the ocean so they can float over to the United States and find true prosperity and freedom. True liberty for the individual. So if an individual has an idea, he has the opportunity to use his idea to create something good for himself and then sell it in a marketplace to help others as well. And through competition, things are sold at decent prices. That's why competition works, because it self-regulates. And they're sold at decent prices. But when the government says, I'm going to create jobs, they don't produce anything. They don't have any wealth and they don't produce anything. Instead, they take some wealth from one section of society to, quote-unquote, create jobs. So, say they take it from banks. Well, those banks will have to fire some people or lay off some people because now they're taxed heavily so the government can create other jobs. So they're not really creating anything. They're just moving that wealth from one section of the society to the other. They're just getting rid of some jobs to create other jobs. It doesn't work. And that's why the conservative doesn't believe in it. Instead, the conservative believes in the Constitution. Instead, the conservative believes in liberty. Instead, the conservative believes that the only job of government is to nurture and protect, as Mark Levin said, the civil society. That's why they're supposed to have militaries and law enforcement. They're supposed to protect, society from outside or inside intervention. They're supposed to regulate the marketplace in terms of copyright, so people can't cheat it. People can't, do things illegal, but they can't. It is not their job to create jobs. It's not their job to give a certain section of the people money. It's not their job to, quote unquote, provide health.